Hi, I'm Rachel Bulman.
Hi, I'm Jason Bulman.
And we're the Bulmans. So we had babies, but they are not here with us, which I'm sure you're just as sad as we are because we really want you to meet them. And we really want them home, but right now they are in the NICU.
They are. They're in the NICU. They were 34 weeks and 5 days. They weighed 5 pounds, 5 ounces each.
So they were kind of amazing. big premature babies. That's everyone. And they both, because they weighed the same, the whole OR staff, they were just in awe. They're like, you never have babies that weigh the same.
I know. I work in the operating room, and I've often described it as, this attempt to control chaos, So for years, I've been, helping to pre-op patients, and then I'll be in the OR for their surgeries. And you can always see, it's kind of a universal thing when you're trying to prepare someone for surgery. I mean, they're nervous, they're scared because they're about to enter into an environment that is by its very nature chaotic, and they're putting their trust in you to try to control that chaos the best you can. But it was a little bit of a unique perspective for me this time as dad and not as the person doing the operating, to sit back there, behind the
blue veil
drape with you, and then to look up and you actually have the OBGYN doing the C-section and his surgical techs, and then you had 2 teams of nurses. Oh my gosh,
there were so many people.
So there was like 15 people in the operating room, and you walk in and you're like, oh my Lord.
Yeah, so just to back up to share with you a little bit about how it all came about. It was probably like a Friday night. I had a really big bout of contractions. But we got through the weekend and they kind of calmed down. That Monday I went in for my regular exam, and he's like, yeah, you're starting to dilate a little bit, not that much. So you'll be fine. You might just need to slow down. So that's not easy to do when there's 4 kids and other things going on. And it was the end of the year. So they have recitals coming up. The girls did. The boys had award ceremonies. So did Gemma. So there was just a lot going on. So slowing down really wasn't in my plans for the week. So picking up the kids from school, and the contractions just hit so hard. It was almost like clockwork. They got in the car and the contractions just started. So I got through the night, but by the next morning they still hadn't really slowed down. And Jason's mom had come over to come and take Abigail to dance for me. And she said, you really should go in. You really need to go get checked. You might as well. There's no one here at the house. You should go. So I called Jason at work, or I texted you and said, hey, I guess I'm going to go in. And you were like, okay. But it's so funny because after 4 children, after losing Carol, you just think about all these things that are like, maybe the babies are coming today, because it's really, there's no hard and fast rules. They try to give you these are the things that you look for, but still sometimes you could go in and there's nothing happening. So I told him, I said, just stay at work.
Yep.
I'll be in touch, type of thing. And so I go in to the hospital, which thankfully my doctor was on call. So he told me to come into the hospital, and I'm thinking, I can do this on my own, right? I can drive myself to the hospital and get myself up to whatever floor I need to go to. It's fine. So I pull in and I get out of the car, and I can barely walk through the parking lot because my contractions were so bad. So I would make it to the edge of the parking lot and just stand there for a second. And then I remember getting in there, and I walked in through the wrong entrance. And so there were some nurses standing there, and I said, hey, I'm just looking for the OB emergency. And she's like, oh, you go through those double doors, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, great. So after she tells me to walk through the double doors, I go, that's great. And then I just stood there because I was contracting, so I couldn't move. And she just looks at me and she goes, did you hear me? And I was like, yeah, I can't move right now. And she goes, can I get you a wheelchair and take you up there? I said, yeah, that'd probably be great. So she took me upstairs. And they hooked me up, and by the time and it was probably 10 minutes, it happened really fast. 10 minutes later, I texted Jason. I said, hey, I just signed the consent for surgery, so you might want to come over here now.
I was like, good God, give me 5 minutes.
So, and they were all very reassuring, like, we won't go back until Dad gets here. And so that was great.
Yeah.
But when we wheeled in there, Jason wasn't in there yet because they wanted to give me everything to get numb for the C-section surgery. And they're like, well, we'll have Dad come in. Listen, guys, they do that now because you guys pass out, like when we do stuff like that. So anyway, he's waiting outside, putting on his dad gear. And I'm sitting inside and I'm like, there are a lot of people in here. And one of the nurses is like, yeah, there's a lot because there's 2 babies. So each baby gets their own team. And then you have your own team. And so everyone is taken care of. And Jason and I were just talking about this, that you have different types of patients that when they come in, you're like, well, I mean, what is that person doing? What are you going to do with that? What's that medicine that you're giving me? But it's just this lesson in giving up control and understanding that everyone, if I have my own team here, they're going to take care of me. And if Josephine has her own team, they're going to take care of Josephine, and they're going to take care of Benedict. Everything's going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
But it's kind of difficult to do that. I mean, listen to what I just told you. I just drove myself to the hospital. So, I mean, control is...
I feel like this is a lesson you learn every single day.
It's true.
Not just you. I'm talking about everybody.
I felt attacked just now.
Yeah, I saw that. Not you.
But, I mean, so it was very chaotic, but like a controlled chaos because of surrender. That's the only reason why the chaos is controlled.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't think of a better example of something that happens to you than a mother who suddenly has to give birth, There's really not much you can do to control that situation.
I know I'm sorry. Congratulations.
Honestly, it's like the most beautiful thing you could think of in this life. So the only active role, we were talking about this, that the mother really has is to allow it to happen to her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to sort of submit to the reality that it's happening. And the more that we fight it, the harder it is, the more frustration we have. And I think that carries on to almost every aspect of our life, where, like Jesus said, don't kick against the goad, We need to sort of accept the reality that we've been given, and it is a gift, and we have to trust that in the end we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
That God's got us,
The other day, because the babies, literally, I would talk to them every day and say, hey, listen, this is how many days we have until you're going to be full term. So, like, if you can wait until this date, then when I have you, when you come out, we can bring you home. But if you come before that, you don't get to come home. So you guys need to hang out. Don't try to come out. They didn't listen. So we already know that they're very rebellious. But after I got to come home and the babies were still, of course, at the hospital, we were in the backyard and Jason was working on the irrigation, because it's like a never-ending saga of irrigation over here. And so I said to him, it's just so funny because I'm just so thankful to be able to have conversations with you. We can talk very freely about most things. Sometimes he does have to drag things out of me. Thank God he's patient. But you said to me, what's going on? And I said, I was thinking about the fact that I really wish that they could have waited, that they would have waited. Like, maybe I should have just endured the contractions for a few more days and maybe the babies could have come home. And you were just like, what? What do you mean? And I was like, well, they weren't so bad. And you were like, Rachel, are you really thinking like that? And I was like, yes. And I just really wish they were home. And you were like, well, I'm glad that you told me that you were thinking like that, because you made the right decision. Like, we made the right decision. You needed to go to the hospital. We needed to have the babies then. Like, you don't know what kind of complications we would have had if you would have waited longer and then your water broke or something else happened. So we made the right decision, and that was just comforting.
Well, being a mom or being a dad is such a heavy responsibility that there's this temptation to believe that you're not good enough for it, and so I felt at that moment that you had this attack on your identity as a mom, that you made a mistake or anything, something like that, which that kind of correlates with this notion of trying to have control of things,
Right.
because both of those things find their origin in fear, like I'm fearful, so therefore I need to try to assert control over the situation so that we eliminate any kind of suffering, or I'm fearful that I'm not good enough, and so I question myself, I question the decisions we make, and that leads to regret and this bad road as well. So yeah, I knew that was on your heart, and and honestly, it's not true. Like objectively speaking, it's not true either, because if you had waited, there's this potential that the babies could have tried to come down the birth canal, and then now it's an urgent thing, C-section, and who knows, you can lose a baby that way.
Right.
So
Right.
we absolutely made the right decision, and you trusted your instincts, and so yeah.
We have learned a lot this week.
Yeah, and everybody was shocked that they came out with full heads of hair, but that's par for the course for us.
All of our kids have had a lot of hair. Gemma has had the most hair out of everyone.
Mhm.
I thought that they were going to be premature, so maybe they're going to be bald. But no, we don't really do bald babies,
That's true.
apparently. So they have a ton of hair, and it's dark and wonderful. And they're actually doing really, really well, other than they just have to gain some endurance. Like, they know how to eat, but they just don't know how to stay awake the whole time. So they'll eat a little bit and fall asleep. But right now, Josephine is really showing off in that way, letting everybody know that she's ready to come home. So
Yeah, she's a better eater than Benedict for sure so far, but he's catching up.
he's catching up.
Yeah,
He's just
little by little.
contemplative. He's a contemplative monk.
Right.
So
He wants to fast more often.
he wants
and
to fast.
he's practicing the virtue of temperance.
Yes, that's exactly it. He's like, this is too much. It's too good. But he has an NG tube. They both have NG tubes. And so the next, I guess, milestone for them is to be able to eat on their own for a certain amount of time, and then be able to remove their NG tubes and go from there. So
It's been an emotional roller coaster, as you can imagine.
yeah, now we're just continuing down this road of waiting for them to come home. And that's a very interesting thing. I told him the other day, I said, I feel like I'm split in half between the hospital and between being home, that when I'm in one place, I wish I was in the other. And so that's been a really interesting thing to kind of figure out how to carry both of these places. And our home right now doesn't quite feel like home until the babies are here. And even the kids themselves are they FaceTimed me right before I was getting discharged, and they were like, how long are you going to be there? And I said, well, I think I'm going to come home tomorrow maybe. And they said, are you bringing the babies? And I said, no, I can't bring the babies yet. And they all were just like, oh, Mom, don't come unless you're bringing the babies. So while our situation could be far worse, I met a woman in the lobby of the NICU who was telling me about her daughter Miracle, that she was born at 23 or 24 weeks and was just fighting every day. And I remember walking back to my room and just weeping on the way back to the room, because we're more blessed than we deserve, and that it could be far, far worse. And there was another night when I was sitting here on the couch, and these bracelets that we have are actually the NICU bracelets. And they told us, they basically identify us as Josephine and Benedict's parents. And they told us to not take them off until the babies come out of the NICU, just so that they can match us up and make sure that we're cleared to go and see them. And I'm sitting on the couch, and for me, I don't really pay attention to these right now, mostly because they're just a reminder that they're not here. These are reminders to me that the babies are not at home. And so I'm sitting on the couch next to Abigail, and she leaned over and she said, I want a gummy bear bracelet like you have. And because she didn't see it as something that was a reminder of something else, she saw it as just something that was in and of itself, something that was beautiful, because she likes the images that are on there. And so it kind of shifted my perspective for a few seconds of telling her that maybe I could find her a gummy bear bracelet. And so every day right now is a fight to remember that we're not in control. And it doesn't have anything to do with children being in the NICU, as much as it's something that we have to learn every day, that no matter what situation you're in, whatever control you think you have, and I think we all learned that too during the pandemic, that control is really doesn't exist. The control that you have is really how you react to something, how you respond, and how much you're willing to surrender to the will of God. And for us, it's really coming to the forefront because we're being called on the carpet about it during this time.
Yeah.
How much do you trust?
Yeah, and maybe if you're suffering with this temptation to want to control everything, one thing that can always help is to remember that in this life anyway, there is no love without suffering. So if you're suffering, usually when you're trying to control something, it's because, there's suffering in this life, and we're trying to avoid it, we're trying to eliminate it. But maybe try transforming it into an act of love. Then you can have a little bit more peace in this life. So yes, we don't get to be with our kids in the NICU all the time because we have kids here. So we offer that up. We give that to God. We recognize we're not in control. We're doing the best we can. We're trying to love our kids here and our children there. And that tends to bring us peace.
And to remember that you are where your feet are planted. And by that I mean that often we kind of wish away our reality because we wish that we were somewhere else, which is a huge temptation right now, that I'll be surrounded here with the kids and I'm thinking to myself, gosh, I wish I was with Josephine and Benedict, or I'll be feeding them in the NICU and think to myself, gosh, I wish I was at the recital, or I wish that I was with the other kids. But it's a lesson in remembering that where my feet are is where I'm meant to be. So give up control, right?
Yeah.
Pray for us.
Pray for us. Thank you for being with us and sharing in our lives.
And we can't wait for you to meet them and for it to be not just a montage of all of our time in the NICU, but for it to be them sitting here with us and sharing our lives with you. So thank you. We can't wait for you to meet Josephine and Benedict, the rest of the Bulman family in the flesh.
That's right.
God bless.
God bless.